need for really sound, relatable financial coaching, guidance, education, and support isn't something that's unique to any particular phase of life. Women go through so many different milestones, and they need to feel that there is somebody they can trust and there is an authority, so that they don't have to wade through everything that's going on, all of that noise in the industry. And they can say, right, I'm going to Dav, or I'm going to Emily because I like her and I relate to her and I can trust what she's telling me. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Dav. I think the trust is one of the main thing, and it's something we've managed to build over the years. And it's by being, independent, unbiased, and really having, customer needs at the center of what we do. I think
definitely
with Dav and with our courses and programs, we have to spend a lot of time with our users, and I think that makes a huge difference because we understand where they are. We sort of keep a pulse on what people are doing with their finances. And sometimes I really feel there's a disconnect between, what you read or what are the products on offer or what you think people need versus what actually women need. And I think what women need also, and I'm sure Dav, you've seen that with, your courses and programs, but I think women also want to do it by themselves. So they want to learn by doing it, and they don't want to be told what to do. It would be a lot easier, but I think we sometimes take this shortcut of we're going to do it for them, and it's the same for men and women. But I think it's so, I know you don't like the word empowering, but I think it's really, really empowering when you do something for yourself, you start investing in yourself, you understand the results, you manage your own emotions when it comes to investing, and you decide, I'm going to change my investments, I'm going to stay invested, I'm going to hold, and I've seen massive changes and really lasting changes when women just take charge of their financial futures. And of course, it takes more time, it takes more education, but I really see a difference. And then that translates very quickly into, of course, building wealth for themselves, but also a level of well-being and happiness that you don't necessarily see when someone does it for you, or maybe a platform or something like that. So it doesn't replace, but I think we have to really integrate education in it.
Completely agree. We can't assume that, and I never made this assumption, we cannot assume that all women want to do business or have their finances managed by or be educated by other women. We cannot make the assumption. And so one of the earliest pieces of feedback I received when I went out and I did surveys and focus groups and all sorts of things, just to test, what appetite might there be for a proposition like this. And somebody who wasn't part of my network had fed back some, basically, a perspective, which was that she didn't want to feel that just because she was a woman that she was going to be targeted and it was all going to be pink, and that she didn't want something that was going to be patronizing and condescending. Of course she doesn't know me, she's just basing it on from her perspective. She's like, that would be my idea of hell. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, I want to feel like, why should I be singled out? Why should I be segregated? And there is a lot of merit in that feedback. Why should why should there be a market for propositions like mine and like Best Pods? I think for me, the thing that has given me a lot of encouragement and a lot of hope is that by being my true and authentic self, the people that will get the most value and the most benefit from being part of the RainCheck community find me. And of course, there is content that we're producing all of the time, and we do workshops, and people find us in different ways, and we're promoting and doing things all the time. But I think it really is testament to the fact that women respond really well to other women that they can relate to. And, as a Black woman in this industry, there are very few of us that are working in finance at a senior level. There is something very powerful about that for all races, because I think that there are people that see me who are non-Black, who will come to me and they're like, oh gosh, Dav, I can really relate to what you're saying, or I know that some of your experiences mean that if you are able to overcome some of these challenges, then I can overcome some of these challenges too. And I think that is something that, inspires them, it spurs them on, and it means that they feel less intimidated as well. So, having the background that I have in the finance industry, having some of the qualifications that I have, it's important because it lends credibility. And this is something that Emily and I have spoken about at length in the past, in the sense that anybody can talk, people can be on TikTok talking about finance, people with no credentials, no qualifications at all. And I will speak very candidly about this because I think there is a real risk that for people that are vulnerable, and not, let's be frank, it's not like all of the best model rain check community are vulnerable, but there will certainly be women who could easily fall victim or prey to people talking about things they're not qualified to talk about, that are encouraging them to invest in things that they have no experience of. And so on that basis, if you were burned by somebody that is arguably an influencer on social media, then what it means is that when credible people try to guide you in other directions, you are going to have a much greater reluctance to follow that guidance. So it really is important that we amplify the fact that we have credentials, that we have qualifications, that we've studied this, we've learned this, we've immersed ourselves in the industry, because that again contributes to the trust. And really, whether it's a man or a woman, that is the basis upon which the strongest relationships are formed. And the thing that I always trade on when it comes to my business is I will form really deep relationships with the rainmakers, and they will all be able to say, irrespective of whether or not they're like, oh, Dav and I are besties. We don't have to be besties for you to get value from the proposition. But what I would hope is that by the end of the experience, you'll say, wow, I've ended this program in a far better financial state of mind and financial situation from a practical perspective than I started. And that, I think, is the power.
And I think, Dav, I agree with you on the rise of, TikTok, financial influencers. You can call us also financial influencers if you want, but as you see a rise of new investors during the pandemic, especially Gen Z, who are going to be digital first, mobile first, very quickly to get started investing. I think what we have to be careful about is this consumption of information like very quickly, and TikTok is amazing for that, and the algorithm makes you just do scroll and just pick like quick tips here and there. I think what people are trying to get from there is a very quick solution to their problems. I want to make money very quickly. I want you to tell me what to do. So I think for us, when we launch 6-week boot camp or like 3-month program, it's how do we get people to actually really learn about something and really do it for themselves, versus the appeal of, okay, I'm going to try this thing and I'm not sure it's going to work, but potentially I'm going to make money. And that's why we've seen rising in scams and people like investing in cryptos. And I think it's just taking the time, taking a step back. So I think social media is extremely dangerous. So of course, it's a massive opportunity for brands. It's a massive opportunity also for us when, we sell like educational programs and coaching and stuff like that. But it's at the same time recognizing that someone who's going to sell you a dream, or someone who has a following that's maybe much more like lifestyle or has been selling other products, then jumps on the financial wagon and says, okay, now I'm just selling cryptos, or I'm just promoting this investment app and look at my investments and stuff like that. I think you have to be careful with who you work with and who is their audience, and are they educated enough, because I'm just worried about the backlash for your brand, for the influencers, of people actually making choices where they don't necessarily understand what they're doing with their finances. So while it's been amazing to see people talking a lot more about money and people getting started, and for us it's great also, like people want to learn and they want to invest more, and women have started to invest, which is fantastic. But it's also, how do we do it, and do we need, maybe regulation is one answer, but again, I think it's for the end user to be a lot more educated about what they can do with their finances, how to recognize scams, how to recognize that an influencer knows what they're talking about, and then doing their own research outside of these like social media platforms.
Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Emily, and particularly your point about regulation is part of the solution. But to my mind, a bigger part of the solution, and the reason why our communities are so powerful, is that I always encourage the rainmakers to use their own judgment. We talk about discernment all the time. It's the difference between, we cannot, nobody's coming to save us. We cannot rely on other people to say, oh, well, that's a scam, red flag. We have to be able to say, well, let me do my due diligence. What's my checklist? What are some of the hallmarks of a scam? So exactly as you described, classic example, somebody who yesterday was talking about fast fashion and has built their entire following and everything on fast fashion, have no background in finance, and are suddenly talking about cryptos particularly. It's always these high risk, the newer, sexier vehicles. They might be talking about NFTs and trying to encourage you to get in them, and they've got a discount code. It might say, put in DAB 100, when you go to buy your NFT. These are some of the things that you need to look out for. And it's really important that we are able to assume that personal responsibility when it comes to our money, because that is the energy that we need for everything around the extent to which we're able to achieve our financial goals and build wealth over the long term, just in general, I think.
You look at scams and how you can get into, because looking back, you're like, oh no, that was a scam and that was obvious. But actually, when you're into it, and that happened to some women in the community who have reported it around cryptos and stuff, you can very quickly get into these things, not really knowing what to do. And because money is still a little bit of a taboo, you don't talk about investing, there's a little bit of shame about trying to do these things and following this type of influencers, you don't talk about it. And very quickly, it's actually too late because you've transferred the money, you've asked someone to buy your cryptos and stuff like that. And I think when this happens to you, then you're like, wow, I'm just going to stop doing everything. I'm just going to, procrastinate. I'll think about money later because I've burned my finger. But actually, it's how do you help also these people to go back into investing in a much more like traditional way, in a much more sustainable way, investing for the long term, going back to like the right sources of information and learning for themselves. So I think in our financial journeys, there's a little bit of things we have to unlearn and learn better, because we've been bombarded by messages telling us that everyone has to invest, that you can make money very quickly. During the pandemic, I think people started investing. They've made money from like traditional investments, made money from cryptos, and now we are in a very different place. So it's not about stopping what you're doing, but maybe reviewing how you've been doing things and make it work for the long term. I mean, we're not looking at 5 years. We're looking at a longer time frame, and that will also mitigate a lot like the risk. But I think for most people investing, you think you can make money very.
Do you feel there's also a degree of an industry responsibility, because a lot of the people who are going maybe to TikTok, they probably feel let down or isolated from the industry, so they're looking for those alternative avenues?
Too slow would be my first observation. So when you think about some of the newer innovations around finances, cryptocurrency being one of them, but even things like buy now, pay later, which they're now only looking to start to regulate now, but it's still a credit line. So, again, when you think about the education, the awareness, the information around buy now, pay later, it's this glossy, sexy, again, you've got the influencers all over Instagram talking about, oh, well, why you don't need to choose between outfit A and outfit B, buy them both and send one back, or buy them and buy now, pay later, all of this jazz. And I think to myself, the fact that it's unregulated is a massive problem. We're targeting impressionable young women, and I say that in a completely non-condescending way, that you're impressionable young women. The average age of a buy now, pay later customer is probably, late teens, early 20s. That doesn't suggest that there are not women in their 30s and later that are not using that. But if you look at the concentration of who's using it, people right at the start of their careers, at the start of their financial journeys, they're excited. You can click 3 times and then you've got these, you've ordered, you've made mass purchases. These things are dropped on your doorstep sometimes on the same day. It's all very quick, exactly as Emily said. Everything is happening at such pace now. It's a very digital first. We've got this generation of digital natives. They're doing everything on their mobile phones, and the regulators simply cannot keep up. They'll be releasing policies, policy documents and white papers long after the advent and the launch of some of these propositions. So you've got this mushrooming industry of proliferation of brands. Klarna is the biggest one and we know about, but there are a number of others in the industry. And so I'm not singling out these providers, because I think, obviously there is a need. They are filling a gap in the market, but I think we need to take a look at why is there that need? Where does that need come from? What do people feel that they're constrained? We've got this mass consumerism. There are a number of competing forces here, and there's a lot of tension. And that, it's in this kind of chaos that brands like Klarna and others can step into the frame. But if you think about financial promotions and the regulation around traditional financial promotions, and I come from a background in which everything that we ever said from a marketing perspective is very heavily regulated. And now when you look at some of the financial promotions that are being put out, I mean, arguably these are financial promotions. You're exhorting people to get into debt for consumer goods, things that they don't necessarily need, because they're not doing buy now, pay later for their Asda shopping. So if they're doing it for things that are not necessarily essentials, and again, this is not judgment as to people's buying habits, but it is looking at, you know, what does the rest of your personal finance look like? And if you find yourself in a position of heavy dependence on something like buy now, pay later, then the regulator has a fiduciary responsibility, in my opinion, to make sure that they're keeping up to date with what's happening, that they're having meetings with some of these brands, that they are close to the business model, they understand the marketing, and they understand the psychology of social media usage and the algorithms, that they have specialists. If they don't have that organic talent that's been cultivated within the regulatory environment, that they are recruiting that talent in from the private sector so that they can understand. I think that's really important. We've seen a similar thing with cryptos, again, unregulated, and people are just putting their money in, have no understanding of what they're doing, and feel, and then expect that they will have recourse to the financial ombudsman scheme or financial services compensation scheme, and they don't. So I think the regulator absolutely has a responsibility. And then even thinking beyond the regulator, looking at the industry as a whole, and we've talked about this at length. I've talked about diversity and inclusion so much, I don't even want to talk about it anymore because it's boring to me now. As personally, I'm bored of it. I've been talking about D&I since 2004. So from my perspective, of course, you know, I fulfill this kind of double category of Black and woman. So I'm always going to be targeted with people like, oh, come and sit on our panel and talk about D&I. I don't talk about it anymore because I'm like, the time for talking about D&I was 20 years ago. The time for acting upon D&I is now. So when we talk about the industry having responsibility, absolutely it has a responsibility to make sure that it has diverse voices, diverse opinions. That study on groupthink was done in like 1971. So if you've only got the same voices around the table, saying the same things, looking at one another and nodding and smiling and then going out for drinks together afterwards, you're only going to get the same products and services being delivered into perpetuity. So the industry absolutely has a responsibility, and it's not about quotas and it's not about positive discrimination. What it is about seeking out the best talent and recognizing that if it doesn't look diverse, you haven't done a good enough job at getting the right talent in the room. That is my very candid opinion on it.
Thank you for being so candid. Very much appreciated. I mean, Emily, is there anything you want to add in terms of sort of the responsibility? Because, I mean, again, maybe it might be quite a narrow view, but I feel as much as there's a personal responsibility, there is a reason why, if there wasn't the gap, these unregulated, well, influencers, you want to call them, they wouldn't have a market without a gap. So, I mean, is there anything any point you want to add there? Anything things that you've experienced in terms of that area?
Yeah, I think regulation, but also clear guidance. Because if you think like people like us who are really trying to offer very clear guidance for our users on what they can do with their finances, not what they should do, but what are the different options and stuff like that. We want to be able to do that in some sort of a framework. And we should all be able to talk about money, and we should all be able to talk about debt and talk about savings and talk about retirement and how much money we need. Because I think by regulating too much, then most people won't be able to have this conversation in the public eye. And we always had this conversation, and you can have this conversation, you know, in a taxi or at home or with a friend at a dinner party, like, what are you investing in? And you even see that in the financial press. I mean, journalists are allowed to mention some of the stocks and stuff like that. So what can we do to help the influencers to, you know, do their job? And maybe there's, you know, something to do around financial promotion, because I think that's like a different game, but really promoting, you know, the education and the guidance, because this has been super helpful. And for most people, they start thinking about money when, you know, they've been scrolling through Instagram and they realize, yeah, actually, I should probably invest money. No, you have to invest money. You know, investing is not a luxury. Everybody has to invest for their own future. But if you never worked in finance, at which point in your life do you actually realize that you have to start investing? Maybe if you have a workplace pension, and thanks to auto-enrollment, people are putting more money towards their pensions, but they don't even know that their pension is invested in the stock market. Or, you know, how is my pension actually invested? Or what can I do with it? Or should I just opt out? So I think we need to be on social media. We need to have brands on social media. We need to talk about products. We need to explain all these concepts. But I think the regulator need to work with influencers to see where is the fine line? What can we avoid? Because also when you look at, you know, TikTok or videos, these are like super short videos. On Instagram, if you look at stories, these disappear after 24 hours. So how can you actually control these things? Because it just takes one people watching one video and then it just disappears. And then maybe they make a bad financial choice. So I think having a framework for people to work within and collaborating with people who actually create the content, that will be amazing to help more people learn more about money and really leverage these channels.
I really strongly believe, I mean, particularly in contrast to some of those stereotypes about women, senior women being, you know, really catty towards one another and spiteful and, you know, not wanting to share information. I think it's really quite encouraging because it's testament to the communities that we are individually trying to build, but who ultimately, you know, these communities they are people that work in all the same sorts of companies and will come into contact with one another. So they are just regular women who want to learn and be advised by other regular women, but just women that they relate to and can trust.
So yeah, Dab, I mean, I think, you know, we've been collaborating and I think it's really helpful, you know, to share ideas and share, you know, partnerships and stuff like that, because we have such a big idea and big picture. And I think it's something when we get on the phone, it's always going back to the basics and why we do what we do and why we do it for the larger world. Why do, you know, what is the impact we want to have? And also on a personal level, what do we want for, you know, for ourselves and for our family? So I think it's always, you know, finding the balance. And as you said, we are different. We have different communities. Vestpod and Raincheck will appeal to like different people, and people can also join both communities. So there's really no way like to compete, even if you know we're offering like the same product, because there's going to be something for each. And also when you look at social media, I mean, you can follow both of us and get tips from both of us. You can listen to both our podcasts. So I think there's going to be information shared in a different way. And what you want is get this moment where you're like, okay, I understand this. I understand this thing about investing. I understand this thing about saving. And then potentially I'll go and use a platform or I'll go and use something else. And that's a win-win for everyone, to be honest. So I think it's really having as many players as possible who share like very valuable, you know, tips, guidance, education to help people and help women in particular make better financial decisions.